Hey, Andy here. This episode was recorded years and years ago at the beginning of quarantine in March, and we were banking this episode until a time when our Ariel and I's schedules didn't line up, and that's this week. So enjoy the retro review of Memento. Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, retro review, Memento. You really need a system if you're gonna make it work. I'm Andy Bowman, and with me today on our special retro review are fan favorite guests who have finally gotten a chance to watch a good movie for this podcast. Steve Guntley and Woody Siskowski of the Ultra 64 podcast.
Hello.
How you guys
doing?
We're doing all right. We're remembering Sammy Jenkins.
Yeah, I was just thinking about him. I was mostly just being very grateful that the Mexican place near me has started letting us do takeout margaritas. So I've got a nice full plastic cup of margarita going on right now.
Is that? I don't think that's legal, Steve.
It is. Yeah, no, they've relaxed some of the rules. Some of the bars around town are letting you do takeout drinks now.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm more hung up on this idea that we were fan favorite guests because I'm suspicious of this theory.
We have never polled the fans, so the only people I've had conversations with, the only guests I've had oh man, yeah, Steve and Woody seem to know their stuff.
Oh, great. Well, the previous things we were really experts on the previous movies we talked about.
I found the trick was I just had to tattoo facts about Super Mario Brothers movie all over my body, and then I could look back on it and just oh yeah, okay, Big Bertha is the fish lady.
Toad is a busker. Toad is a busker.
Yep.
Mojo.
Remember the meteorite piece.
Why does it say walk the dinosaur on both my feet? What is happening?
No, you take off one shoe and it says open the door. And you say, okay. And then you take off the other shoe and it says get on the floor. And then you lift up your shirt and it says everybody walk the dinosaur.
Oh my God.
Oh, I'm actually going to get that.
So weird story about Memento. I knew someone in college who, for whatever reason, was dead set on getting the John G. murdered and raped your wife tattoo.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst one of those to get.
Yeah.
You could get the rules on your thigh or something. Don't get that one.
Yeah, that's a tough sell when you propose to your wife.
Yeah.
I'll do it if you get that tattoo removed.
Yeah.
I want to branch off in there a little bit. I do think, to spoiler alert, I really like this movie. I think it's an excellent movie, but I do think that it's part of kind of the film bro canon.
Yes.
Which is kind of like this movie, Fight Club, Seven, Donnie Darko. It was kind of like these movies just that are sort of, a lot of them lie at the top of IMDb. They're all very guy focused. They're just kind of sometimes dark for no real reason. And
right.
they're kind of like the line of oh yeah, I'm really into movies. Have you seen this crazy movie Memento? And
I feel like
blow your mind.
This movie, if you're around my age, then this movie was issued to you along with your college acceptance letter.
Yeah.
You pretty much had to have this DVD if you were a 19-year-old college student around the early 2000s. So I watched this movie a lot. It's been a long time since I did. But man, wasn't this the heyday of great special edition DVDs with just tons of shit hidden in them, animated menus and everything's all goofy. I don't know.
Where they actually bothered to put Easter eggs in the menus.
Yes. Oh God, this one had a crazy one. I remember where you could watch the movie in proper chronological order.
Yes, that somebody has posted that to Vimeo. If you just search for Memento chronological,
yeah,
you can watch this movie in the chronological order right now.
Which, firstly, why would you want to? Because I feel like the novelty of this movie, the whole novelty of this movie is that it unfolds backwards and it's showing you a different way of telling this story. And secondly, the twist wouldn't work at all if you're just showing this normal. If it's in normal order, it doesn't really work.
I'm going to disagree with that because I think one of the things that makes this movie so good, and I don't know, sorry Andy if we're jumping the gun.
No,
but,
go for it.
Is I think that the movie works pretty good chronologically. All the fundamentals here are going to work good. And I always forget that this movie even kind of has a twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like sort of the twistiest part of the twist is probably my least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's why this movie is so good, is there's something I think about of like layers of sort of confusion or unfamiliarity that something presents to you. And it's like, I think it's part of the reason why Parasite, the movie, has been so successful, is because it only has sort of one layer of unfamiliarity, which is the subtitles.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's all sort of, it's very well done, but it's all like a familiar movie that is pretty easy to get into. But there's a lot of movies that you'll get into where it's like the movie's in black and white, or the movie has subtitles, or the movie has this confusing plot, or it's doing multiple things at the same time, and then it's just asking too much of you. And I think what's really good about Memento is it's really a pretty intuitive, straightforward thriller with like, the hook is the guy has a short-term memory loss. And I think even if that was all that it was going on, it would still be pretty engaging based on the way that the other characters in the movie kind of manipulate him.
Mm.
And its other hook is that, it plays out backwards, which sounds more complicated than it is, because it usually sort of, you get a hang of it about 10 minutes into the movie. And just again, for our other... One of the other podcasts we do is we're reading through Infinite Jest, the book, and that's an example of something that I think just has way too many layers of confusion.
Mm.
It's just asking so much of you that, whereas I feel like it doesn't succeed kind of to the way that this movie does.
Well,
not that they're quite going for the same thing.
Well, the Leonard's wife actually says when she's reading the book, and he's like, "Oh, well, isn't the point of a book that you don't know what's going to happen?"
Yeah.
Because this Nolan is not necessarily a very subtle director.
No.
Right. No, definitely not.
But what he is good at is his editing work and making this flow. If like a Mick G or a Troy Duffy tried to make this movie, I don't think they can make the editing work as well.
No, and this got an Oscar nomination for its editing too, which like I think is very well deserved, because like this movie, there are moments in this movie where it's just like something clicks into place when you see I think the early example I think of is we see a scene start with Joe Pantoliano coming in and saying, "Lenny," and then they go into the whole scene. And then the next scene, we don't know exactly what's happening. It just kind of drops us in. But then it ends with that moment of him coming through the door. He says, "Lenny," and it's a hard cut. And every time I watch this movie, it's like clicks for me. It's like, fuck, okay, this is the way that they're just kind of showing us how to process this movie. They're giving us the rules. It's a really great example of showing and not telling, which I really appreciate that. And I think that's a lot of the editing right there. It's just that coming across.
And that Lenny sticks in my head so much.
Lenny!
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Another thing here, if they were to make this movie today, I mean, Guy Pearce could just tell everyone, "Oh, I have a Finding Dory syndrome."
Yeah. Oh, God, what was that? They made that joke on something like...
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I never appreciated that in Finding Nemo as kind of like a character trait to be played for humor.
Yeah.
Because and I think that we'll get into that a little bit in this movie. It's one of the most tragic things that can happen to someone.
And for the most part, they play it for laughs in the first Nemo. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think they do a better job. I mean, not to go off on this. I think they do a better job of addressing the tragic nature of it and the disability angle of it in the second movie. The second movie is not as strong. Like, I think if they kept that as the through line throughout the entire thing instead of wacky hijinks, it would have been a much stronger film. But they do address it at least.
And they attempt to address it here. They kind of mention this idea that, well, Leonard is effectively as a person dead. Like, he's not going to be changing as a person anymore.
Yeah.
Although his impacts will still have an effect. And with that, we should probably actually give the basic premise of this movie. I know most of the people who have watched this, who are listening, I mean, this is a movie you should watch.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that as
Definitely.
sort of a baseline approach.
Yeah. Watch this movie for sure.
Right. And the basic premise of this movie is that Guy Pearce, who really looks like he really looks like Brad Pitt from Fight Club in this movie.
He does.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt was approached to be in this movie, but because he had just done Fight Club, he didn't want to do something kind of so similar. Yeah. But he was considered.
Right. But Guy Pearce wakes up. He is, through a voiceover, he lets us know he doesn't know where he is. Okay, he's in a hotel room. He doesn't know why he's there. And he informs us that he has a particular condition that we will just call Finding Dory syndrome.
Yeah.
And he is on a revenge quest to go and kill the man who raped and murdered his wife. Going ahead and effectively fridging a female character that we never really see or find out much about anyway.
I mean, I just as a quick drop in here. I mean, it is a real syndrome. Like, we can call it Finding Dory syndrome, but it is called retrograde amnesia.
Mm.
And it is, I mean, this movie is really pretty accurate in its portrayal, from my understanding of, like, he endures head trauma, and the way that memories are formed, like the part of your brain that forms sort of longer term memories, is a separate part. And so that once they sort of get secured in his brain, so he remembers who he is and who his wife was and things like that. But because of that head injury, the brain is not able to make any new memories. And so I think that this movie does a good job of sort of replicating that feel. And it's pretty respectful to him the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if it was in chronological order, a lot of these scenes might come off as being more goofy, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because he's telling a character, because of the way the story is structured, he has to give us this information for the first time as the viewer, so we understand what's going on. But the result of that, it means that he's told the characters this many, many times before.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think the thing with this movie for me, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and do my hot take at the beginning, which is that, like, as far as Christopher Nolan is concerned, I like pretty much all of his movies. I haven't loved any of them, and I don't think he's made a masterpiece yet. I was not actually... I'm one of the... Again, I hesitate to even say this. I was not a big fan of The Dark Knight. I don't think The Dark Knight is a great movie. I think it has a...
I'm with you on that. I won't take you to task.
I think it's an exceptional performance from Heath Ledger, like legit one of the great film performances of all time, but I don't think the movie lives up to that. And that's kind of the movie that a lot of Nolan fans hang their hat on. And I think my issue with it is because he's very, very innovative, and this is a very innovative, clever movie, but things need to be sacrificed in order for it to work. And this movie has maybe the biggest plot hole of any movie in history, and once I had it pointed out to me, I've never been able to move past it.
Oh no, you're gonna ruin Memento for me.
I'm sorry, plug your ears, everybody, if you want to hear
Woody,
it. If you
go
don't,
ahead and keep the first part of this podcast as something to remember Memento by.
Let me block out this new memory before Steve ruins it for his plot hole.
I know, hey, you know what? Maybe y'all can explain it to me. But okay, here's my issue with the movie. His last memory is his wife being murdered. So how does he know that he has amnesia? Like, at what point? Why does he wake up every day knowing that he has amnesia? If that was happened as a result of the last thing that he remembers.
Okay, I'm trying to work my head around that.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do as we're discussing it.
Yes, yeah. I guess that's just, I don't know. I forget where that was pointed out to me, like maybe in a review at the time, but like, I read that and I'm just like, yeah.
I do have a point there.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm curious.
They did say that his wife survived the assault.
Okay, yeah.
Right, that's part of the twist.
Right.
Right. I think, and they also kind of imply that it might be psychological.
Yeah.
So I think that there's just something there. I mean, I don't know.
And look, I don't need it.
I got a response for you.
Yeah,
that I'm happy with. I think that my explanation for that is, in real life, the brain works in bizarre, inexplicable ways.
Sure.
And the formation of memory, people have not still been able to explain. Like, there's, I was just doing the briefest of research on this stuff before we were talking about this movie. There's a British gentleman named Clive Waring, who's still alive, who, due to he got cysts on his brain, which caused him to get both retrograde amnesia and interrograde amnesia, meaning he basically doesn't remember anything before or after whatever's going on right now.
Wow.
So he'll kind of wake up constantly and keep writing in his journal, I'm awake now. However, this guy is a famous conductor and musicologist. He can still conduct, he conducted orchestras he can still conduct orchestras through and play complicated works of music on the piano, even though his memory does not last that long.
So it's just kind of like muscle memory or something, or?
Yeah. Exactly. That's not necessarily an answer to your plot hole, but it's basically when you get into sort of these bizarre ways that the brain works, there's not really good explanations for why a lot of the things work that they do. So I'm perfectly willing to accept that that's just the way it is for his brain.
And it's something
that doesn't bother me.
I get, at the end of the day, it doesn't super matter because you're just kind of facilitating this cool idea. It's we can throw that aside and just say, all right, this is a script convenience. All right, whatever. Let's just go with it. Because there are moments in this movie that really click and you're just watching and you're like, fuck, this is a cool movie. And it's only in the slower bits or in the more plot heavy bits or the more confusing bits when you really start to kind of pick at it that some of these things start to really bother me. But I don't know, the moments that they really pull off. I mean, I forget what it was. I think one of the early scenes when he's in the restaurant, right before he meets Natalie for the last/first time. And I'm just like, this is just the coolest fucking noir idea. And then I kept thinking about if you want to show the world that you're a really rad, new young filmmaker in the modern age, you do a twist on a noir film, so
and I want to say super young. I looked up Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
That guy's not even 50 years old.
No.
And this movie is 20 years old. So he was younger than us when he made this movie,
yeah.
Which is one of those I'm real bummed out about the way my life has gone at this
I
point
know
type of facts.
And this is his second movie too, his second full-length movie. But I think that's a great way to get people's attention. Rian Johnson did the same in Brick, and who else? It was on the tip of my tongue a second ago. I don't know, but you can do cool twists on the noir film.
Beloved director Alex Proyas.
Alex Proyas, I love Alex Proyas. Dark City Rules, L.A. Confidential, things like that. I think it's a great way to kind of announce yourself as someone who has a great control of genre and tone. And I think that's what Christopher Nolan showed here. And there are parts of this that are just incredibly impressive. The way it's all been layered in, and the way that the thing I really like about this movie is that it trusts you as an audience until the end when it gets a little exposition-y. But most of it, it's just kind of it's willing to let you figure it out. And I really appreciate that about it.
But it doesn't. I don't think it makes it too hard on you. It's not quite like an Upstream Color.
No.
Where it's just going to present a bunch of images and then you're all right, make of it what you will.
Right.
It's you watch it once and you're oh, I get what it was about.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to watch it again for the things that I missed.
Yeah.
So, Upstream Color.
Yeah.
You were not a fan.
I am not a fan of Upstream. I watched it at probably the wrong time in my life. It was right when it came out, and I was excited. And I was just starting to get really into film. And it was one of those films where I was like, okay, this is some pretentious.
Do you have I have a question. Do you have a machine on your recording device that makes that beep? Are you a shock jock radio jockey here? Because that is beeped in real time, audience.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I invested...
Or you just make that sound with your mouth.
I invested in a little a thing called the Go XLR Mini. It's just a little audio, what do they call it? Universal audio adapter, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, plug in mic into it, and one of the things it has is just a beep and a cough button. And and people who have been listening to the podcast for the past few weeks have probably been noticing that I've been relying on it heavily.
Hey,
is there?
So much fun.
Does it have a fart button built in?
No, it does not.
A toilet flush sound, perhaps.
But if you get the very expensive regular Go XLR, they do have that. I just found out about this this noir called Panic in the Streets. Have you guys heard of this
I don't know that one.
It's appropriate for now because it's from 1950. But what happens is a man is killed, and when they do an autopsy, they realize that he has the pneumonic plague.
Oh, wow.
So they have to find who killed him. Not justice is one of the things, but they really need to because he's been exposed to the plague.
This sounds kind of awesome. This is an Elia Kazan movie. I'm looking it up while you're talking. This is an Elia Kazan movie with Richard Widmark and Jack Palance and Zero Mostel. This sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to be watching it very, very soon, but Panic in the Streets, I just heard about it. I've heard good things, and I want to watch it.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the closest thing to like a neo-noir that I had seen until Brick.
Yeah,
because there's a moment in time where everyone was trying to be a Quentin Tarantino.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the terrible movie that I just could not get through called Killing Zoe.
Yeah. Oh God, fuck that movie. Or Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Everyone wanted to be Quentin Tarantino, and for a little bit, I think everyone tried to be Memento or Christopher Nolan. I can't think of any movie that actually tried to do this stuff, but this is just such a great example of what a noir can be.
Well, and I love the idea of playing with the structure of a film, which, I mean, this was pretty novel for a movie. I can't think of any movies off the top of my head that did this. Like, I know Harold Pinter had a play that did this, and, like, I was in a show called Fuddy Mears by Edward Albee with a central character that had anterograde amnesia, and people were trying to manipulate her and everything like that. So it had been done before in the theater. I can't think of a movie I've seen that it runs backwards like this. And that's not to say it strictly runs backwards, but, like, if you're not familiar with the movie, it's like it has the color sequences are running chronologically backwards, and then the black and white sequences are running chronologically forwards until they kind of meet at the end.
Well, another thing that this movie does right at the beginning to, again, help you kind of figure out what's going on is actually the very first shot of this movie is somebody getting shot.
Yeah.
And then it will kind of rewind, and you'll see the guy sort of get back up, and you'll see the bullet sort of work its way back into the gun and sort of reload, and you're like, oh, I kind of see what's happening. I see what's happening here is that we're going backwards, and then it sort of puts your brain in that right perspective for the scene that goes ahead of it. Because it's not like the movie actually runs backwards.
Yeah, no.
Watching it in rewind.
Yeah, that'd be insufferable.
The scenes are, that would be pretty awful. Are done in blocks of what happens before, and this is the movie to do that effect in, because it really puts you in that situation of every movie, how the characters got where they are. And so the only way to sort of make you replicate the feeling that the Guy Pearce character has is to run this direction. And so you don't know how he got in the situation that he got in.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm curious about this because this movie was based on a short story that Christopher Nolan's brother wrote.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of had this idea after taking a psychology class in college, and Nolan's brother Jonathan Nolan wrote this story. I just read the short story. It's only, it takes about 10 minutes to read.
Oh.
It takes it's very much in the place of the character's head. It's not plot driven at all. It's more of just like an exploration of like, what would your thoughts be like, and how would you get through the day, and what would all these notes be like. And so it has kind of the premise of this movie, but none of the sort of action and driving plot.
Yeah.
Man, I really am thinking that Nolan's next movie, Tenet, is going to be this meets Inception visually.
He's really, like, Nolan as a filmmaker has been very, very fixated on this idea of, like, relative time, because this keeps coming back and forth. Like Memento plays with time, and then Interstellar plays with time, Inception plays with time, Dunkirk plays with time. Like, that's kind of his obsession, and I think he does it very well, and I think he explores it very well. It's not always entirely clear what he's trying to say with it, other than like, ooh, isn't this cool?
Well, that was the thing, is like in this movie, it's sort of an idea that fits so well with the plot. I actually found Dunkirk to be a very confusing movie, and that's because I wasn't aware of that aspect of it and kind of the structural change of time.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really fit in with the story aside from the, oh, isn't this neat perspective. And again, I think it works better in Interstellar because like the relativity of time is such a huge thing in space travel.
Yeah. And in Inception, it's even better because dreams, you can just make up your own rules. It's great.
Yeah, but Inception started to drive me nuts after a while
Me too.
because that movie was so long, and there's that scene of that car slowly falling off the bridge, and all this other stuff is happening inside, and I'm like, I know the point is that this is taking a long time,
Yeah.
but holy shit, this is taking a long time. Let's move it along.
We actually just watched Inception and did a episode retro review for that. That'll be coming out around the time Tenet comes out.
Oh, cool.
But I don't think Christopher Nolan actually has dreams. Like, I don't think he understands how really weird and bizarre dreams can be, because Inception is very grounded. And I mean, you could do so much crazier, over-the-top stuff, and instead it's mostly just a very grounded action movie with a what seems to be like a tryout for a James Bond film.
Christopher Nolan, like, based on his movies, I've never watched interviews with him, but he seems like a very humorless guy. Like, his movies do not have sort of... It's weird, because they have, like, creativity from a technical standpoint, but he's kind of like the opposite of Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
Like, who makes a bunch of movies that are just kind of, like, bizarre and out there, and, like, he seems like he would enjoy because they're weird and colorful, but they're, like, formulaic. They're just, like, giant messes.
Yeah.
Like, and Christopher Nolan, like, contains all of these crazy ideas so well, but the movies like don't have a ton of personality.
Right. And
No.
I do find Nolan's women characters, female characters, to be pretty flat.
Yeah, I think we should talk a little bit about Carrie Ann Moss in this movie, because like I'm not entirely sure what he's trying to say about her or what we're supposed to think about her. And I think it's because we don't get, I mean, obviously the nature of the movie, it needs to be from a man with limited memories perspective. So like we know what he knows, but I guess it's just like I'm not entirely certain what we're supposed to think about her. Like, is she like this femme fatale, or is she someone who took advantage of him this one time in a moment of weakness, or is she just like this sociopathic string puller? Like, I don't really know what we're supposed to think about her.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also, again, I think it doesn't matter, because I think that this movie is so uninterested in his characters. Like, I think Guy Pearce is perfectly fine in this movie, and, you know, I think all the acting is fine, but I watched this movie last night. The only line I remember from this movie is, Lenny! So, there's like nothing really to the dialogue that's all that interesting.
That's Nolan for me, too. Like I find his screenplays are like, they're all very rich in ideas, but very, very graceless in developing its themes. You know, like Dark Knight really, really hits you over the head with all of its ideas. Like, you can't ignore it. And this one's a little more subtle than The Dark Knight, but it's still kind of in that same vein. You know, everything is very, very neatly explained for you at the end of this movie, which I do feel like is kind of a misstep. But we'll get to that.
It is the official stance of Geek 101 that The Dark Knight is overrated. And
yeah.
Okay, good.
From a narrative standpoint, that movie is a mess.
It is.
I was a little more engaged by sort of the emotional themes of this movie than I remembered, because now that I knew what was going on and sort of remember where this movie was going. And I think I hit on a theme that I don't think it's brought up a lot, that I think actually really resonates with this movie, which is sort of people's unwillingness to accept powerlessness before their own mental illness. Because the character Sammy Jenkins basically forms, at least, you know, in Guy Pearce's mind, forms this same sort of condition, and his wife is sort of unwilling to accept that this is actually the case.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of her belief that he can sort of overcome it. Which unfortunately is not the case, and as in the real life is not the case. It's just people have a belief that they can be stronger than their brain, that they can overcome their sort of mental illness. And that's what happens with the Guy Pearce character too, because he believes that because he's organized, because he keeps all these notes, he will remember when, he gets revenge.
Yeah.
He thinks that because he's organized, he can overcome his mental illness. And it's pretty tragic because that, in fact, is not the case.
Very early on, and this is a thing that comes back, is Lenny's like, well, police make decision based on facts and they follow those conclusions. And it's very clear that's what Lenny thinks he is doing, except as we find out, these facts are all based on either spur of the moment emotional impulses.
Yeah.
Right.
Or basically just facts that he thinks are facts. And this is pretty
alternative facts, if you will.
Right,
Yes.
right. This is pretty relevant to our modern day, where a lot of these things might be facts, but without the context, they're way more dangerous than outright lies would be.
I kept wondering, I don't know, maybe you guys can flesh this thought out for me, but how much of this movie would be resolved if he had just dated his comments on his notes? If he just written a date next to what time and date this person said this thing, why did I change this note, why did I change this, when did I change this? How much of that do you think would be resolved?
Well, he wouldn't know what time or date it was at any given time.
Yeah.
So he'd always have to, I guess, needs to carry around it. No, he has to tattoo a calendar on himself and Mr. Zazaz, draw an X on each day into his leg so he can remember what day it actually is.
I mean, I was gonna say we weren't carrying around cell phones in 2000 for the most part. I mean, that would have time and date capabilities for the most part. So you could excuse it a little bit, but cell phones existed. You would have had.
I think the core of this though is that he lives an impossible existence.
Yeah.
There's without sort of someone in his life to directly take care of him, he's trying to go it as his own because he doesn't trust these other people, very justifiably so.
Yeah.
But the point is, even though he's guided by revenge, because the Jonathan Nolan short story basically takes place, the character's just in an asylum.
Uh-huh.
And he's sort of having all these thoughts, but he can't function on his own. He's got a note that just says brush teeth, and it's set aside for 30 minutes. And, Lenny in this movie, just, he's just 100% out of his league, and this movie wants us to think that he is capable and able to solve these problems, but he has no way to function in society, let alone try and be a detective.
Yeah. And that's kind of the ultimate sad tragic thing at the end of this movie that I think works really, really well, and that's that this revelation that he was never this hard-boiled detective. He was never this case that he's got himself all wrapped up in has been resolved for years, and he's just being used, and they're letting him live in this fantasy world. And now, because of his actions, because he executed Joe Pantoliano, he's untethered. The one person who is kind of using him for sure, but also looking out for him at least a little bit, is gone.
Why does that guy stick with him? why is Teddy even there in the first? Was he using him to try and kill this other guy to get the car full of drugs? Was that the idea?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. No. That was my impression, is that they kept finding people who were named John G, who were underground types, using his cops connections to kind of just point Lenny at them so that he could make money.
So they're just kind of using Lenny as an unwitting hitman.
Yeah.
Kinda. I get the sense that Joe Pantoliano's character was more or less a straight cop. Teddy. Yeah, Teddy. I think he was more or less a straight cop, and then their paths kind of crossed, and he realized the potential of it, and then just kind of started breaking bad a little bit. But I think he is kind of using Lenny as inadvertent muscle for all these different things.
Right. Also, what an interesting note just to make about this is that every chance the movie gets, it reminds you that Lenny is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
And at least for the first viewing, you end up believing him most of the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you do. And that's sort of a good sort of exercise in, that's an idea of a protagonist is it's so, every time a movie is oh, actually this thing that you've learned is false, because whenever a movie shows us something, even if it's going to come from a very unreliable narrator, if this sometimes a movie will have a scene where like someone is like, this is how Guy Ritchie movies do this a lot.
Yeah.
Where they're like, this is how it could have happened. And then it backs up and you're like, that's not really how it happened though. But that scene still sticks in your head. It's like the images are much stronger than the kind of narration or what the characters actually say.
It's the end of Wayne's World approach to filmmaking that they're really embracing. Wait, let's do the good ending.
Oh man, that would have been awesome if the Wayne's World guys show up like, excellent, bizarre twist ending.
That ending sucked. Let's see the good ending. Billy boo, billy boo, billy boo.
Well,
Yeah.
this movie does take place in the Batman universe.
Does it?
Oh
Are,
yeah.
are you guys aware of the connection?
Is it
No.
through Mark Boone Jr.?
No, it's actually with Thomas Lennon.
Oh, right,
as
yeah.
the Doctor.
I forgot he was in this, yeah.
Right, he plays the Doctor in this, and he plays the Doctor in Batman Dark Knight Rises. Dark Knight Rises. The really
That's
bad one.
awesome. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. I know Mark Boone Jr. comes back as like Harvey Bullock, but not Harvey Bullock in Batman Begins. He's one of those character actors I really like just because he's like super ugly and like I don't know. I have a I don't mean that to
Put it
sound
on
mean.
his playbill.
I don't mean that to sound mean. I just have a great affinity for like uglier kind of untraditional looking character actors, and I think he's a really really good one on top of it. So like I watched lots of Sons of Anarchy largely just because of him. So
He had a great role in Last Man on Earth.
oh right, yeah. No, he's great.
Oh, I want to talk about. Are we ready to start talk about the beginning of this movie?
Yeah.
The beginning and or ending of this movie.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
So the part I don't like is I generally always forget that this movie has a twist.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it sort of overdoes it because it starts with revealing that, Lenny is shooting this guy, and then your question is, how did we get there? And the movie at the end explains how we got there in a very good, effective way, but it also throws in this sort of other idea of like, oh, you remember who Sammy Jenkins was? Actually, you were Sammy Jenkins, and your wife didn't die. And that to me felt like this exercise of like, why is this in here? Like, I feel like this movie is engaging enough, and it's a sense of like the filmmaker trying to sort of trick us and pull us, because I feel like you can kind of anticipate, or it's a satisfying direction that it goes otherwise, but there's nothing that sort of hints you in that direction. So it feels like they're kind of just putting that in as this extra facet, and that's really my only criticism with this movie. And that's not even something that bothers me because it's so minor the movie, I always forget it's there. But I think it would be better without that.
So I have a theory about why it might have actually been added to the script at all. This movie came out in 2000, 20 years ago, right after The Sixth Sense.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess The Sixth Sense is kind of the everyone wants to have a twist.
Yeah. I have absolutely no idea, but if that's the case, but I know that it's not something that Nolan really keeps returning to as far as a giant twist that shakes the entire foundation of the film.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if maybe the idea that his wife is still alive or whatever, if just that was just put in or encouraged by producers.
I can see
And
that.
I think they leave room for it to be kind of ambiguous, I think, because you can make the argument that Teddy is lying to him when he's explaining all this.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no reason for Teddy to tell the truth ever in this movie.
No, I mean, my understanding, like, I do believe he is telling the truth, and that, like, as a result, all of the actions of the movie are happening because he is willfully rejecting the truth. Like, he decides he's not going to believe
I
it.
I think that plays the best that way.
Yeah, it needs to be more of like a moralistic story there. So I think that does work well. I do just want to really single out the performances in this by Harriet Sampson Harris and Stephen Tobolowsky, who plays Sammy Jenkins and his wife. Like,
Yes.
Holy fuck. I've seen Stephen Tobolowsky in a million things, and I forget how good he is in this movie at just like conveying absolute... Like when his wife is like dead on the couch and he doesn't understand why, and he's just like, oh, that breaks my heart. And
Yeah, he's simultaneously like very warm, but also like just super oblivious to anything.
Yeah, and Harriet Sampson Harris, I didn't know her when I first saw this movie. Since then, I've watched all of Frasier, and she's Frasier's agent on that show. She has a recurring bit, and she's super, super funny. So I've kind of got to know her as like this really funny comedic actress. And she is so good in this movie as well. Like, and it's a mostly wordless performance from both of them, but they're really, really good.
What was your favorite Tobolowsky role?
Oh man, I mean, obviously Ned the Head is got to be up there for you. I loved his little cameo as a Who's the Boss scholar on Community. God, there's so many. I'm like blanking on how many movies he's been in right now. But
Woody, do you have a favorite? Are you a Tobolowsky?
No,
head?
I'm not a Tobol. I have. Let me check my Tobolowsky files and see what's in there. No, I'm sorry. It's coming up empty.
I will say he's one of my favorite podcast guests ever because he has 100 million stories and he's a great storyteller. So, and he's really open with all of them. So
it's funny that you said Tobolowsky files there, Woody.
Yeah, I might have done that on purpose.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was on purpose because that would have been great. I really loved him in Silicon Valley.
Oh yeah, he was good on that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Like, all the actors are very good. Guy Pearce is able to portray an earnestness that kind of, it almost wins you over constantly, right? Like you're almost on his side just because of his earnestness.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that Guy Pearce is named Guy because, like, to me, like, he's just sort of, he's kind of like the blandest example of just like, he's a guy.
Yeah.
Like, you need a guy for this movie, get Guy Pearce. Like, he's a guy. Like, he'll fulfill the role. Like, he's certainly not bad or anything, but like, I definitely don't remember him in this movie as like bringing a specific energy to it.
Well, this is an interesting one because like Carrie Ann Moss at one point in this movie says that he doesn't feel fear, which is kind of a side effect of not being able to form memories. So he has to kind of play the whole thing with like this flat, effectless kind of, I don't know, kind of drifting through the movie almost, while still trying to convey a little bit of tension and a little bit of like manic energy. And I think he walks that line pretty well in this. Like, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything I would have done differently.
No, definitely not.
Weirdly, Guy Pearce is in the Vin Diesel movie Bloodshot.
Oh, shit.
Where he plays the character who warps Vin Diesel's memories to make him go after people who Vin Diesel thinks killed his wife.
Oh, wow. Okay. Appropriate.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh, have you guys not seen Bloodshot?
You know that?
No, we didn't brave the wilds right before the pandemic hit to go see the new Vin Diesel movie.
Well, it is on VOD now.
Hey, there we go.
But the trailer just ruins this
Vin on demand.
Twist.
Vin on Diesel.
But yeah, Guy Pearce basically plays a character who digitally alters Vin Diesel's memories to kill people.
That's crazy. Every time I see Carrie Ann Moss in a movie, I also remember like, shit, we really slept on Carrie Ann Moss as a society. Like, Matrix was huge, this was huge, and then like we didn't really put her in anything again for years and years and years.
I think she got typecast in kind of a weird way, because she is such a distinct looking person.
Yeah.
And the wardrobe and garb for the Matrix was also so distinct.
Yeah.
That it was sort of impossible to see her. Whenever you saw her in anything else, you're like, oh, it's the Matrix person. And like, it's not because she played some kind of weird character in that or something. It's just like that image is so ingrained with the way she looks that I don't think she could escape that.
For me too, I wonder if it hurt that like this is her other big non-Matrix role and they have like a major Matrix cast member in it. You know, so I always wonder if that like hurts things a little bit for her. Like this just kind of gets lumped in with that. But she's great in this, and she's not given a lot on the page to work with. And I think she finds some notes in here that are like really interesting and sympathetic, like, which is, again, that's why that scene where she's kind of like verbally berating him, like, I really, really don't like that scene just because I don't know again, I've mentioned, I don't know what they're trying to do with her. This also seems like a very graceless way for her to go about doing this thing that she's trying to do. Like, it seems like the character that we've seen at this point is smarter than just like dropping a bunch of R words and like calling his wife a whore and like, you know, it didn't resonate with it. It didn't work, I don't think.
I like that scene because I feel like it goes on long enough that it's kind of the point where you're like, oh, I'm actually ahead of the movie at this point.
Yeah.
It's one of the few points where you're like, I know what's going to happen. And it's kind of a satisfying little moment, even though the scene itself is kind of unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a man, it's a weird scene, and it really says a lot about how far I've come that I like felt uncomfortable when she drops the R word.
Yeah. They'd use that one a lot in this movie.
I mean, none of the, when you think back on this movie, like, you realize sort of how unpleasant all of the characters are.
Yeah.
Sort of how dark. It's odd because watching this movie, it doesn't strike me as a super dark movie because it's not really exceptionally gory at any parts. There's nothing that feels super malicious. But the content here is pretty dark, and everyone involved is kind of a jerk. And
Yeah.
sort of that exposes more as the movie goes on.
And I like that it's like a sun-dappled noir, too. Like, they shot it all in Burbank, just in kind of like seedy neighborhoods around California. So, like, it's sunny and bright the entire movie, but, like, all these seedy goings-on are happening, in between the cracks. So I like that.
And I mean, all that's been gentrified now, so.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, no doubt.
The end of the movie, though, where Guy Pearce, in his anger and rage, knowingly basically sends himself after Teddy.
Yeah.
That, to me, and Woody, you talked about it a little bit earlier, that Guy Pearce keeps saying that with Sammy, nobody really understood his condition, but he understands the condition now that he has it. But it really shows us that he does not understand his condition.
Right.
No, and that's very accurate as to mental health in general. Like, if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to help someone who's having some kind of mental health crisis, you try to reason with them in some way, or you'll be like, hey, let's find you a way to get help. And they're going to say, no, I don't need help because you're the one who's not understanding the situation. Because all we can be is in our own heads. They know what it's like in their own head, and thus, how can we explain to them from outside that they're seeing things that aren't there? They're not perceiving things as reality.
Well, exactly.
I mean, if you want to know a really good movie about mental health that is completely and utterly accurate and well thought out, last year this little movie came out called The Joker.
Oh yeah.
Now
we live in a society.
Right? Now we may think that, the Joker's just a wacky guy, but apparently there's something there. I don't know
Apparently
what
he's
it was,
a clown
but
with
it's there.
feelings.
It's the movie that asked, why does he put acid in his water squirter?
God,
No.
My feelings of that movie are very just disappointed.
If I could be a human GIF, I would be Justin McElroy opening the door and saying, it's trash. But yeah, can't do it.
Yeah.
I'll just say it's trash. I'll just go the faster way, not describe a GIF, and then just say it's trash. I think it's a trash movie. There you go.
Yeah. It technically it does some really good things, but then just why that script didn't need to happen.
No.
Anyway, that's way off subject.
It is a very bad script. I will say it's probably the best produced. It's probably the movie that fires on the most cylinders with the worst script that I've seen.
That's fair. Yeah, because it's got a lot working for it.
Somebody did actually tweet who I'll have them on a guest episode of this podcast later, but they
their name is Joaquin Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but they tweeted that if somebody told them that that Troy Duffy had directed Joker, they would have believed it.
Yeah. Did Troy Duffy do anything else besides Boondock Saints?
I think he did. He did one other thing afterwards. If
wasn't there a sequel to Boondock Saints?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
All Saints
yeah.
Day.
Because he was the subject of one of my favorite documentaries ever,
Yes,
which
Overnight.
is Overnight. Yeah, where, man, what an asshole that guy is.
Yeah. No, he has only done Boondock Saints and Boondock Saints 2, All Saints Day, but he did release a record called Release the Hounds.
Sure. Okay. All right. Release them hounds, Troy.
Oh, man. Yeah, so kind of just wrapping up this discussion, and Woody, you actually kind of touched on this earlier. I don't know why I think of this movie as a geek movie.
I don't either, because I think of it as a bro movie.
Right.
Bros are
You
geeks.
definitely like, yeah, well, sometimes. Aren't we all geeks at heart? Yeah. So yeah, why do you think of this movie as a geek movie, Andy?
And I was trying to think of it, and I think it's just kind of a gateway to loving film.
I think that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, like I said, this was issued to you when you were a college freshman. This is part of your starter pack, along with Fight Club and Pulp Fiction and a bunch of other movies you only realize later are completely devoid of female characters.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. 7.
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
A lot of them have Kevin Spacey, unfortunately.
They really did.
The
That's a
Usual
bummer.
Suspects is probably in one too.
Yeah.
Unlike some of those movies, this movie actually aged pretty well over the 20 years.
Yeah,
Yes.
not bad. I think I like it more watching it now than I did last time I saw it 15 years ago. Maybe because now Christopher Nolan is like a capital D director. He's like a huge deal with like an oeuvre and everything. You know, you have to pay attention to him, and you can kind of look back on this as like, all right, yeah, there's a lot of rough ideas here of what he would become. You know, you see a lot of the early stages of what he would become, and he still had some maturing to do as a filmmaker, I think, when he was making this, but this was very, very ambitious and really cool.
Yeah.
So Steve said when talking about Christopher Nolan movies that he doesn't think Christopher Nolan has made a masterpiece. I disagree with that. I believe Memento is a masterpiece.
Okay.
I think this is basically a perfect movie. Like I find it engaging every single time. The last 2 times I've watched this movie, I've been way tired, and I'm like, I don't think I'm up for Memento. Like, it seems like too much. I'll just watch an hour and then maybe watch the second half. But, like, I stick it through each time, and I'm like, man, this is a good movie. Like, another thing I really like about this movie compared to most of Nolan's movies is it's only 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's all it needs to be, because it really gets to where it wants to be in a very satisfying way. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic movie.
I think I'm the same way, because I do feel like my 2 favorite Nolan movies are this and Dunkirk, which are the 2 shortest ones in his entire library. Yeah. So yeah, I think you're onto something with that.
I really want to watch Interstellar again because I really liked it, but I'm like, even though we're confined to our homes, there's so many other things that I want to do with 3.5 hours.
Yeah. Watch The Irishman again. Why not? Yeah.
Oh, no, I'd much rather watch Interstellar again.
Man, this is like a very interesting movie because it doesn't have a lot of the bloat that, you know, bigger productions would go on to have. I'm looking at you, Interstellar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
the bloatiest of the bloat.
Yeah.
It has so much extra stuff that does not need to be there.
Well, that's the thing. Like most of Nolan's movies, I think I've seen this one more than once. I've seen The Dark Knight more than once, and everything else I've only seen one time. Like I haven't felt the need to go back and revisit many of his films. I don't really know why. Maybe it is the length. Maybe it's just like, I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of it is a lot of his films, the enjoyment is not knowing where you're going. And since they're sort of have these themes of like messing with you kind of the whole time as the audience member, once you sort of know how it's going to end and know where it's going, a lot of sort of the joy is gone from that movie.
Yeah.
Because they're so rich in plot and ideas, but those are things you kind of get on the first viewing. I feel like movies that are fun to rewatch are movies that are built on interesting dialogue and characters, like Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah.
Like I could watch Hail Caesar over and over again, even though like the plot of that movie is just uninteresting.
Oh yeah, even
but, it has so many fun, goofy parts and dialogue.
I guess I feel like, for me, like Rian Johnson scratches the same itch that Christopher Nolan does for a lot of people, but he's just like a better filmmaker and a much, much, much better writer, I think. So, you know, if given my druthers, I mean, there's no reason to choose between them necessarily. You can watch both movies.
No, it's not like Christopher Nolan has been flooding the market.
Yeah.
Man, Knives Out was so much fun, though. Yeah, guys, I think this is about the end of the line of the discussion of Memento. It's such a weird movie. I just recorded an episode on cats.
Oh, yes.
Okay. It's weird in a different way than Cats.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, it was very difficult to have any kind of like grounded, structured conversation about Cats because that movie has no grounding and no structure.
Right.
Memento does have a very specific structure. It's just difficult to have a structured conversation. You kind of have to bounce around and just be like, no, go watch this movie. This movie is a unique thing, and if you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to see it, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't seen it, you got to erase the part where I spoiled the ending of the movie.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't have been listening to this episode. But, I definitely think this is... Yeah, I would say this is a must-watch for sure. Like, even if it's not one I love as much as everyone else, I think this is a really innovative movie. And I mean, this is in the Library of Congress. It was the first film made since 2000, the first like fictional film made since 2000 to be put in the Library of Congress. Like,
as opposed to those ones that are just like footages of lakes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
those are the other ones in Congress.
It's mostly just lake footage.
You think I'm joking? I am not.
Oh, no, I don't doubt it.
Well, it was Richard Linklater, so you just had to put it in, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, do you want to give Memento a grade? I know, Woody, you've just said it's a masterpiece, but
yeah, A+. There you go, bam.
I will give it 3.5 out of 4 Polaroids.
Okay. Is one of those a Polaroid with a creepy smile on the face after you've killed the man?
They're literally all just butts.
You're pointing to your nipple for some reason. I never got that.
I'm gonna give this movie an A. I really enjoyed rewatching it more than I thought I would, actually. Because normally I'm not a person who can actually rewatch movies. I tend to have a.
No, me neither.
I already know where this is going. Just get there.
Well, and that's the thing, and you'd think this movie would suffer more than most because of that, but I don't think it does.
No, it's fun to see how the pieces click together. And I will say, too, for people who don't mind watching movies with little commercial breaks, this is free on Tubi, T-U-B-I. I don't know if anyone's used that streaming service, but it's free on there with some ads, so you can watch it pretty easily.
Oh.
I will also say that Tubi has a bunch of... very bizarre, like 80s and 90s, like very exploitation movies.
Yeah.
Like the Hard Ticket. Who's the director of Hard Ticket to Hawaii?
Andy Sedaris. Yeah.
Andy Sedaris.
Yeah.
Like you can watch almost the whole Andy Sedaris catalog.
Which
on there.
you should. They're amazing. But yeah, I've weirdly gotten very into Tubi as like a film resource because they've got some weird stuff on there. So yeah, definitely check it out.
A recommendation on Tubi actually, because one of my favorite film critics recommended this. It's called The Plague Dogs.
Oh yeah,
and it's an animated film.
I was just reading about that movie.
That movie's fucked up.
Yeah, if you just want another Watership Down moment, The Plague Dogs.
Yeah.
If you want to lighten the mood in this difficult time,
yeah,
why not watch some animated dogs get tortured?
Absolutely.
All right. Do you guys have any pluggables to plug? I'm fairly certain you do.
We do. Well, one of our shows is called Ultra 64. You can find us at Ultra 64 Podcast in pretty much every social media format. That's the show where we're going through every game in the Nintendo 64 catalog in random order until we have played them all. We have more than 220 games in there at this point, so like we're getting pretty close to the end. Lots and lots of back episodes to dig through. We also have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/ultra64pod, and you can find all kinds of bonus episodes on there. Right now, we're in a bit of a contagion productivity boost where we're releasing a whole bunch of bonus episodes right now just because we can. So we're doing that. There's Andy was on an episode that's in our main feed when we were talking about Underhero a little while ago. Definitely check that one out. And then we have another podcast. Woody, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that other podcast is called Jest Friends. I think I brought it up earlier. We're reading the book Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. At this point, it's very begrudgingly. But if you've ever been curious about it, we're doing it 50 pages at a time, so we will sort of walk you through it, and we can all be frustrated together. And much like Ultra 64, we are almost done with that. I think we only have about 150 pages more to go. So if you want to read along with us, you got some serious reading to do.
Yeah, by my estimate, like 4 episodes left, maybe. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
There is nothing more hipster
friends,
millennial.
Jest.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
There's nothing more hipster millennial than listening to a podcast about a book instead of listening to the audiobook.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Hebrews Pale Ale. You can find
I'm following you on Letterboxd right now, Andy. Will you give me that name one more time?
at Hebrews Pale Ale.
Oh, pale ale.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were like paleo, like paleontologist.
Oh,
Okay.
Hebrews, like I make, and then Pale Ale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
okay,
Hebrews
well,
Pale
see,
Ale.
I thought now I was searching for like the Jewish people.
That's what I thought.
So
I mean that
I'm
is
glad that we've had this talk.
That is the duality of that name. And you can find the Geek 101 podcast wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.